Hi, my name is Stephen Cornea. I'm a GIS and watershed specialist here at EPCAMR, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the work we do with the underground mine maps for the Mine Subsidence Insurance Program for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So it's basically a four-step process. The first step would be to scan and catalog the underground mine maps. Once they're scanned and cataloged, we load them into our mapping software, GIS software. That's where we do the georeferencing. And then once the maps are georeferenced, we patch them together in what we call a mosaic. And then the last step would be digitizing, where we collect all the data off the map. And so we're going to get started with scanning one of the mine maps that we have here today. Okay, so here we have one of the mine maps that is being prepared to be scanned. And before we run it through the scanner, we want to collect some information off the map to catalog it. And just some basic information from the map, like the local ID of the map itself, the date it was scanned, the date of the map, which some maps will have a date in the header, but other maps don't. Like this one doesn't have a date on it, so what we're going to want to do is look at the map, and you'll see the engineers made markings where they last did their workings. So what we like to do is just look until we find the most recent date that you can find on the map, and that's the date that we'll go with. So here I see one. Let's see, this is 1933. This is 433. And as we go further down here, looks like it's getting more recent. And yeah, it looks like we have one at 10/30/35, so that's what we would put for the map date for this particular map. You also want to fill in the mine name. So this would be the Truesdale Bliss Colliery. And then we have the name of the coal seam itself. So this would be the number 4 coal seam. The coal field, and we're in the northern field for this map. The county, which would be Luzerne County. The municipality or quadrangle would be Nanticoke. And just some physical properties of the map, like the map type. So this would be an underground mine map. You also have surface maps and cross sections, but mostly we're focusing on the underground mine maps. And then we got to list the type of medium that it's on. This is on linen. And then we need to know the short width of the map, just so we know if it's able to fit through a scanner or not. And then lastly is the scale units. So this would be 1:100 scale, which is the ideal map for our purposes because it has most of the elevation data and the mine shafts, and those maps have the most detail. So yeah, this is an example of other maps with all the data filled out. But so we're just going to go ahead and take this over to the scanner and get it ready to be scanned. Okay, so here we have a map that after it's been scanned, we added it into our mapping software here, which is the ArcGIS. And the first thing we want to do with this map is georeference it so we could find the proper location on the ground where it's located. So the first thing we have to do when the map first comes up, it just shows, covering this whole area. And what we want to do is we want to find the right spot for it to go. So the first thing is we want to scale it down to the size that we think we're going to be working with. And we know about where this map is going to be. So it's probably going to be around something like this size. It doesn't need to be perfect at first. And then we're going to rotate it into the orientation we needed, which is something about like this. And so now that we have it in like a general size and general area that we need, we're going to pull up our surface mosaic. And our surface mosaic has the points that we're going to use to georeference this map to. So we're going to zoom in here a little bit more. And now I notice that, so the area we're looking at is right over here. So we need to move our map. So we're going to get a little bit closer to where we're working with. And once we have it about pretty close to where it needs to be, we're going to zoom in and find actual control points to anchor them to the ground. So a few more tweaking here. Needs to be a little bit smaller. Okay. So now we're going to go to our add control points, and we're going to zoom in and investigate and try to find some matching points that will match up with our map and the base map. Okay, there we go. So to get a good georeference, ideally you want to focus on the four corners of the map. You need at least, technically you need 3 points, but it's good to have 4 or more. So I'm going to zoom into this area. And what we're looking at is we're looking at possible mine shafts. We could be other elevation points or boundary markers. Anything that you could find common on both maps. So once this loads, we're going to pull this swipe tool that will help us with that. So right now I'm looking at this area right here because that's a unique geometry, and I can probably find some of these points that will line up once the map loads. So I'm seeing this point right here. So I'm going to go ahead. You want to get zoomed in as close as you can to make it as accurate as possible. So I drop my first control point. And then now I want to go back to our base map. And if I'm not lost, where was it? Right here, yeah. Okay, so that should be our first control point. And what that'll do, we'll anchor our map to that spot right there. So when we zoom out, we should have just a point in the corner of the map. Okay, so now we want to find another area map further away from there and basically do the same process. And you'll notice as you go on, with every control point you make, the next one will be slightly closer and closer. And before you know it, you'll see them lining up. Okay, so now that we have all 4 points georeferenced for this map, we can go into our table here. And basically what we're looking at is the residual number here, this value all the way to the right. So you notice these are all 0.3, 0.2, which is good. We want to keep the residual under 2, which just means that the map is as accurate as it can be. It's not skewed or not lined up or anything. So as you saw before, the map didn't really seem to line up underneath, but now if we go back to our swipe tool, we'll notice that all these boundary lines, I can zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so if I use the swipe tool, I'm looking at this boundary marker right up here. We have a couple points. So when I swipe, it should line up. And as you'll see on the base map, it looks like they line up pretty close. And so that tells me that we have a pretty successfully georeferenced map. And so now that the map is georeferenced, we can go on and add it to the mosaic layer. Okay, so we just showed you the georeferencing portion. The next step, once you have your map georeferenced, is to patch the maps together for a given vein in what we call a mosaic. And what we're looking at here is an example of a mosaic for the Wilkes-Barre West quadrangle of the lower Ross veins. Now this mosaic is already done, and I could show you how we came about making these. So basically, when the mining was done, there were all these polygons here in the black are all different collieries, and every colliery had different methods and different naming conventions for their mines. So that's why you notice that these maps don't line up perfectly in some areas. Like down here in the bottom left in the Truesdale area, they did a good job, keeping a nice grid system, but you don't really see that in all the collieries. So what we have to do is go through all the maps and find the ones that best represent the mining done in the area with, so we want to find the ones that not only are the most recent, but that have good data on them, because eventually, if I zoom into one of these maps, we want to be able to see the elevation points. So, so right here would be an example of an elevation point. So you see a lot of numbers on the maps, and like, how do I know which one's an elevation point and which one's random? So the elevation points will always have a decimal in them, and then they'll sometimes have a negative sign, whether or not they're above or below sea level. And also a lot of these maps are scanned, and they're copies of copies, and they're not always in the best condition. A lot of them are really dirty. A lot of them are just stained with coal. You could see miners and engineers, had them down in the mines, and they're getting their dirty coal hands all over them. So we want to find maps that are actually legible, because the next step is we're going to be selecting these elevation points and different mine features and the boundary of the mines to digitize them so we can catalog all that data. So what we're looking at here, this is a nice clean map that has nice elevation points. So that's why we decided to include this one in the mosaic. And you'll see, we get other maps like this one. Like I was saying, they might be a little harder to read, but sometimes if that's the only map you're working with, that's what you have to deal with, and you're just gonna have to do the best you can. So yeah, you might have to zoom in a little bit. It might take you a while to be able to read some of these numbers, but we'll still be able to pull data off this one. So yeah, this was the best we could do for this area. And as you look at some of these maps, you'll see, let's zoom in a little bit here. So you'll see some of these hashed out areas as opposed to the clean areas with the room and pillar. So this means that these were robbed, where, these hashed out areas, where the miners would go in and mine the coal, and then after a while, when there's not as much coal to be mined, when there's more slim pickings, they'll go back in the areas that are already mined and remove the coal and pillars, where the whole area will collapse. And that's an important thing to look out for when you're talking about mine subsidence, because those areas could be more prone to mine subsidence, like you're seeing in this area here. We make a mosaic for all the veins in the given area. I think we got like, here's a whole list of all the veins that we're working with. We got like 15 or so. I haven't counted them, but that's basically the idea with the mosaicing. Now that we have the mosaic made, the last step in this process is to digitize the points off the map. So basically now we're getting the data off the map and we're cataloging it and adding attributes to it. So the main data point on the maps that we're looking for is the elevation point. So that would be the underground elevation of the coal vein. And so basically we have to scan through the maps, and if you see this grid here, this is a 250 foot by 250 foot grid. And the idea is, so we don't have to digitize every single elevation point because that would, there's a lot of them, so that would be a nightmare. But to get an accurate geometry of the mine layers, we want to get one within every, within every box if we can. So the whole idea is to basically scan along until you find a nice elevation point that you could read, and then you go ahead and add the point, and then you keep on going, and then you find one in the next box and add the point. And as you can see, it's a lot of work. It could be pretty tedious, but once you get rolling, it's not too bad. So you see one here, 437.1. Another one here, 393.3. And so the idea is to do this across the entire vein. And once you have all the points added, they'll pop up into this attribute table here where you can go in and fill what the elevations are. And then you also tell the source of the map in case we ever have to go back. So, so if we zoom out here, we could see all the elevation points that were digitized for this vein. You'll notice there's some areas like over here where, like I said earlier, could be hard to read. There's actually just nothing there. But I know there's some areas that you might not see a point, could be hard to read. If that's the case, we have enough points to get us a good idea of the geometry here. And the main idea of collecting these elevation points is that it'll tell us the volume of void space in the mines, since we know the thickness of the mines, and using that we could determine, for certain projects how much water we could fit under there, for example. Or also, it's important to know how deep these mines are. Mine that is a couple hundred feet below you isn't going to cause as much of a problem as a mine that's only like, maybe 50 or 100 feet below you in terms of mine subsidence. So that's one of the reasons that we do this. And also, along with finding the elevation points, we also want to come in and label all the mine shafts. So you'll see here, you have a mine shaft there, mine shaft there. That is the next step to be done in this map itself. It hasn't been done yet. So as you see, you don't see any points currently. But that will be the next step for this map. And then lastly, you would just want to draw a barrier around the entire workings. And that's basically it for the digitizing. So it's a lot of just finding the elevation points and keeping track of them.